All right, we're live. What's up, everyone? How's it going? Welcome to our Week 5 preview show. I am your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcelio Langella. Mars, we are beyond the halfway point. 7 regular season weeks for AA, and B, and then I think there goes week 8 for C and D, and I think HVFL also has 7 regular season weeks. So we are beyond the halfway point, and we are really in the thick of things where now the playoff picture really starts to come into everyone's view. So welcome, Mars, and then I'll welcome to our audience. Appreciate you guys as joining, as always, tuning in. But Mars, welcome.
Yeah, man. It's a different type of week because I want to kind of call out all the haters, or at least say appreciate the haters, because
we'll get to that.
Your boy made some history this week, so it's good to be here. So we're getting close to the playoffs, and this is where things get really interesting.
They do, and Mars is referring. So it is a dark day for the Fam Sports crew. Unfortunately, Mars won last week, so he had an historic game pick. He only had one loss in his game picks last week, so he ended up beating me. It is now we have both tied in wins. So week 1 was a push, and week 3 was a push between us two. And then week 2 and 4. I won week 2, Mars won week 4 with his historic one. Only had one missed pick, which was Yorktown Fox Lane. So with that, though, because of that historic thing, he has now actually moved ahead of me in win percentage. He's at 72%. I am at 71%. So pretty dark. I know a lot of people have picked me last week, so I do let you down, and I apologize for it. We're going to get him this week, though, guys. So make sure if you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so. Also, Mars is putting up a poll on who you think is going to win this week. So, again, it's been a push for 2 weeks. And I have won 1 and Mars has won 1. So, we're seeing people filter in how we're going to start the show. And I gave a shout out to Mars, who ended up winning this week. I also want to give a shout out to RCK Barstool, who had a little fun with me. They made a video on Instagram kind of messing with my pick on the Ketchum East Ramapo game, and I'm not going to show the video because it's a little complicated to pull those videos, but I wanted to give them a little quick shout out too. It's always fun interacting with our fans. They never like to make memes when we're right, though, Mars, which is a little frustrating, but they definitely like to jump on the bandwagon when we get it wrong, and we do find it to be fun and entertaining. So just wanted to give them a quick shout out as well. But let's start off, Mars, talking about the standings. The playoff picture is underway. Kevin Devaney actually put out a pretty good piece talking about the B system, but I want to start off with the AA, and I think you guys can see it on my screen, right? Yep. So I just want to kind of go over what the standings look like really quickly in League A and in League B, and how it works, the playoffs this year. For them is League A is going to have 6 playoff teams. We mentioned on the show previously. They're going to have 6 playoff teams. League B is going to have 2. So it's really important. These matchups are getting more and more intense as you're trying to get into the top 6 on one league and in the top 2 in League B. And this is what the standings look like right now. I believe they are correct. Now, the Mamaroneck North Rockland, Mamaroneck is number 2 because they won over North Rockland. So they own the tiebreaker. But look at Arlington, Carmel, Suffern, all tied in that 4 slot. Carmel does have a win over Suffern. So you're going to see on our schedule, there's some teams playing each other is huge. And then when you go to the other side in League B, 2 of these teams are coming out of this side. And, you have Mt Vernon and Ausing tied with the most wins. Mt Vernon has a loss. Ausing is 3-0 in league play. But again, those 2 have 3 wins. Ketchum has 2 wins, and they're 2-1. Yonkers Force is 2-2. So again, once we're going to start getting to tiebreakers, who has the most win in these leagues. So very interesting on where the dynamic is right now. And then when we go to A, in A, it's going to be 4 and 4. So you're going to have 4 from A, you're going to have 4 for B, and then they're going to kind of crisscross with each other. So number 1 seed for A is going to play the number 4 seed from B, so on and so forth. 1 seed from B plays the 4 seed from A. So that's how that works right now. Somers is up on top. Brewster and Mahopac only have 1 loss. Now, Mahopac beat Brewster, so they, from my understanding, the tiebreaker is head-to-head. I'm interested to see what the crossovers mean. That's kind of the big thing. Maybe those in chat can let me know how the crossover system works, because they play the non-league crossover. Where does that stand in the tiebreaker system? Is it head-to-head first, then overall record? So interested to see. I want to do a little bit more research into that. But then Yorktown, they have 2 losses, and they had that huge loss last week to Fox Lane, who got their first league win. These are things that are getting very interesting now. And then when you look down on League B, I mean, there's kind of like this big 3 right now. We got Rye, Harrison, and Eastchester. Rye's undefeated league play. Harrison's undefeated in league play. Very interesting there. Eastchester lost to Harrison last week, getting its first loss in league play, and they're playing Rye. So, things are very interesting going on this week. And then South and North are playing each other in the huge rivalry, which we'll talk about. They're both looking for that league play to get into that 4th slot. So Mars, this is getting very interesting here. Someone's got to get that 4th slot. And then when we go to now the Pioneer system, which is complicated, to say the least. So for those that don't understand, a Pioneer system, they use a formula to calculate your standings. And I have it pulled up on the screen. Kevin Devaney did a really good job of writing this up. To calculate the formula, he says, is simple. It is not too simple, but this is how it works, right? You take your own winning percentage, you add the combined winning percentage of the teams beaten, you subtract that by the losing percentage of the teams that you lost to, and then you multiply by the number by this predetermined multiplier in the chart below. And that multiplier is based on, again, your preseason rank and stuff like that, from my understanding. So it's not that simple. It's not as clean cut as the other leagues, but they did this because there's 15 teams. There's kind of this upper echelon B and this lower echelon B. And so they're trying to, make it as even as possible, but there's always that issue, right, when it comes to this. And this is where the current standings are through week 4, right? I mean, Westlake is sitting up at number 1. That one was a bit surprising to me because I thought Bronxville would be number 1. They have the higher multiplier. But, Westlake's ratio is higher. So very interesting there. Pearl River sitting at 3. Pleasantville sitting at 4. They have the highest multiplier because of, again, who they're playing, their preseason rank. They're sitting at 4. The 2 teams with the highest multipliers are Pleasantville and Ardsley down at 8. But look at Rhinebeck at 5 and Briarcliff Hamilton at 7. So Sleepy Hollow at 9. I mean, these are teams that are right on the cusp of getting into the playoffs. So getting victories are so important in league play, as you can see from this Pioneer system. You can't change the multiplier from my understanding, but you can get those wins. You can increase your ratio, your win percentage. Those are going to be so important. And then when we get to the other leagues, C and D, we know the 2 D teams, they play each other, between Tuckahoe and Tuckahoe and Haldane, excuse me. And then the top 4 teams in C get into the playoffs. So again, this is the standings. They combine C and D into one league, but the Ds obviously get removed because they play each other in the section finals. So you got Valhalla, Dobbs Ferry, Putt Valley all undefeated in league play right now. Hastings right now is sitting at that 4th spot because they had that big victory against Woodlands. So that was such an important victory for them. And then the Hudson Valley Football League, top 4 teams, from my understanding as well. And this is what it looks like right now. Horace Greeley, Tappan Zee. Tappan Zee does have the tiebreaker win over Greeley. Peekskill and Portchester sitting at the top 4 right now, but Panis tying with Portchester on wins. So that's the standings, guys. Again, Mars, any quick thoughts that you have?
No, I mean, obviously we're still getting to the math calculations, and B always gets me it just gets me to laugh because it comes from being simplified with how A does their playoffs. AA is all about the power system, and then they got B showing up and in this Pioneer system that gets all complicated. And then you got Class D that was always the same two teams. So based on Section 1, and each class has a completely different playoff system. And every year it always gets updated based on teams and sizes and all that stuff. But it's definitely going to get interesting as we start getting to the final weeks of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And then welcome. I know a bunch of people joined in. We just went over kind of the standings and some of how the playoff structure is for the different leagues. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Don't worry if you missed anything. This is going to be posted on our YouTube channel. If you go to live at the end of the show, you can go and rewatch any parts that you missed. We're now going to dive into our game picks. And we're going to start at AA and work our way down to the Hudson Valley Football League. And again, guys, we have our poll in the chat, and throw around any questions you guys might have. And if you guys know people who like the show, share it. We really do appreciate you guys, as always, interacting. Tell us who you think is going to win in the chat. We always have a great time and appreciate you guys' support as always. So with that said, Mars, let's pull up the AA schedule and let's start diving into these games, because a lot of important matchups when it comes to the playoffs is taking place. And let's start with the first one. And that's a league game. We have Ausing 3-1 at Mt Vernon, who's 3-2. And I just brought up the standings, right? And those two guys sitting up at the top of it in League B. They're both tied in league wins with 3. And when I look at Ausing, they won 34-26 versus Yonkers Brave. And Mt Vernon won 37-6 versus Yonkers Force. And these are two teams that are pretty hot. Ausing has won 2 straight. Mt Vernon has won 3 straight. And when you look at these two teams, man, it's so interesting. Ausing offensively, we know they focus in on the run, right? It's so important to them. They don't throw the ball very often. And over the last 2 games, Mars, they have rushed for over 430 yards in those last 2 games. And it's led by their running back in Ramirez, who had 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. Abar is another one with over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. But when you look at, Mt Vernon, they're really hot offensively. They have 2 straight games scoring 37-plus points. The big plays, they've really hit on some big plays. It starts with their quarterback in White, who's been very impressive, and their running back, Terry, and a couple wide receivers in Finley and Tyler, all making some big plays for this team. And defensively, they're number 3 in points allowed. Now, with that, again, Mt Vernon has been very impressive, winning 3 straight games. But I am going to go with Ausing. Ausing has the number 2 defense in AA, Mars. 3 games, they've allowed 15 or less points. And last week was a little bit of a down, game for them. They gave up a lot of rushing yards, which they had to be a lot better at. But they have forced 5 turnovers over the last 2 games. They have some big-time playmakers in Moore, Cassione, and then on the back end with McCormick, Frith, and Pine. These guys can really get after the football. The most important thing is for them is controlling the ball offensively, because Mt Vernon is high-powered. They don't want to get behind where they have to start throwing the ball. I think they're going to slow the game down. I think they're going to make some big plays on defense, forcing turnovers. I'm going to go with Ausing, but this is going to be a very entertaining game.
Yeah, see, this was actually pretty tough for me, but I'm also going to go with Ausing. I feel like their defense has been very impressive, and I feel like the most crucial aspect of it was the fact that they can force turnovers. And if they can win that battle, right, get the ball more in their hands and slow the game down and control the pace, then I think they're going to be fine. I think Mt Vernon has shown a tremendous growth in the last 3 weeks, and obviously they have the momentum. They're playing at home. I just think that Ausing has kind of the better, I guess you say, situation, and their defense has been great, right? So I feel like if they win the turnover battle, I feel like they're going to win there. So I'm going to go with Ausing.
Yeah, and if Ausing gets behind, that's where Mt Vernon can really get ahead, because they can get after the quarterback. They had 6 sacks last week, so it's going to be so important for Ausing to stay control of the football. Let's go to the next one, Mars, and this is another league game. White Plains 0-4 at East Ramapo, who is 1-3, and White Plains lost 35-28 at Clarkstown North in a pretty entertaining game. East Ramapo lost 28-0 versus Ketchum. And again, 2 teams where, White Plains offensively, they can move the ball. I mean, we have seen that. They have speed, they've hit big plays, but turnovers have been an absolute killer all season. And same thing for East Ramapo. It's like, which offense are we going to see? They have 2 games, Mars, where they've scored 20-plus points, and then 2 games where they've been shut out. So we know they focus in on the run game, but they have also had major turnovers that have really hurt them. So both offenses, again, White Plains, I think, can move it more consistently. East Ramapo, they can run the football, but both teams have struggled with turnovers. With that said, I am going to go with East Ramapo because defensively, I think they're a little bit better. Anthony Mack and Pierre are big playmakers for them. And White Plains, they're 15 out of 15 in points allowed. They've allowed 30-plus points in each game this season. I think East Ramapo, it'll help their offense a little bit more, but they have to avoid turnovers. The defense has made plays over the last few weeks. The offense has keep giving the ball back, and it's really hurt them. But I am going to go with East Ramapo at home. To me, is a big factor.
This was definitely a tough one. Both teams have struggles. They both have things that they have to improve on. But I'm going to go with White Plains getting their first win of the season. I think their offense is very high-powered. They had a shootout against Clarkstown North. And I feel like they actually have the ability to, if they actually limit the mistakes, then they can actually get a lot of points. Their defense will at least try to slow down East Ramapo, because I feel like their offense is so high-powered that they are scoring at will a lot of times. It's really just their defense needs to kind of buckle down and be the bend but don't break. So I'm going to go with White Plains.
Next up, a big league matchup here. We have Suffern, who's 2-3, and Mamaroneck, who's 4-1. Mamaroneck is second in League A. Suffern is tied for fourth with Carmel and Arlington, but they did lose to Carmel, and they have not played Arlington yet. So tied for fourth, but one of the tiebreakers they have lost to. But when you look at Suffern, they've won 22-21 at the last second at John J. East Fishkill. Mamaroneck won 23-13 at Arlington. Again, before the season, these were two, Mamaroneck was high on my list of picks, and Suffern to me was a sleeper team. Mamaroneck has definitely really shown they've picked things up. Offensively, listen, they're 10th out of points scored. They started off slow, but they have scored 20-plus points in 3 straight games, and last week wasn't their cleanest game. But I think they're going to have opportunities to run the ball and hit some big plays against this Suffern defense. Quarterback Jacobson has had 5 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. Leibowitz was getting involved in the run game, and we know about Davidson, who can hit some big plays. For Suffern, defensively, Mars, they're 12 out of 15 in points allowed. They've allowed 3 30-plus point games. Now, they were definitely better than last week getting stops, but can they limit the big plays? Because offensively, they can score. Jeff Joseph had 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. We know about Tehran and Mitchell making big plays. But I'm going to go with Mamaroneck. This is the 6th-ranked defense for Mamaroneck. They were up 16-0 last week. The defense forced 4 turnovers, including 3 INTs. And Suffern has shown at times that they can turn the ball over. And if Mamaroneck can control the ball, similar to what they did in North Rockland, Suffern has struggled to get stops. And I think Mamaroneck can take advantage of that. I'm going to go with Mamaroneck.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Mamaroneck. They're at home. They have proven that they can stay and win against these top-tier teams. And even though, they had a relatively, closer game against Arlington. I know it's 23-13. It's not the craziest points differences. But, Arlington's a pretty sizable team. And Carmel is obviously a sizable team. And they have proven that they can go either on the road, get these big wins against opponents. Now they're at home. I feel like they have the momentum on their side. I'm going to go with Mamaroneck.
Next up, double league matchup, we have Yonkers Brave 2-3 at Ketchum, who's 3-1. Another very interesting one to me. Yonkers Brave is tied for 5th right now. Again, you got to get to that top 2, so this is a huge opportunity for them. And Ketchum is 3rd in the standing. So both these teams, a massive league game right here. And Yonkers Brave last week lost 34-26 at Ausing. They competed versus Ausing, and Ketchum won definitively 28-0 at East Ramapo. Ketchum has won 2 straight. Yonkers Brave has lost 3 straight. So, again, really interesting one to me. But in this one, listen, Yonkers Brave, they showed that they can move the ball. I mean, they have a really strong running game. And Sis, he had another, 200-yard performance against a strong Austin defense last week. So we know that they can run the ball, and defensively, they are a scrappy group that can force turnovers. But I'm going to go with Ketchum here. They're 0-1 at home. They were 3-0 on the road. They got to get a victory at home. But this is the number 2 offense so far in AA. They have scored 76 points over the last 2 games, and that was driven by their offense and special teams. We had Biber, Turner, and Fay each had a rushing touchdown. We know about their quarterback and Fitzsimmons. This offensive line definitely needs to open things up because Yonkers Brave is very aggressive, but they have given up some big plays, especially in the run game. You can take advantage of that. So they got to protect the ball. And how about this surprise number, Mars? Ketchum tied for 3rd out of 15 in points allowed. They can slow down the run game. It's very difficult against a strong rush attack in Yonkers Brave, but just limit the big plays and get them passing where this defensive line can get after the quarterback. I am going to go with Ketchum. They are at home. They've been pretty impressive to start this year. I think this is a huge opportunity to get them in a prime position to potentially make the playoffs. they got to do it with a win here. I'm going to go with Ketchum.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Ketchum. I feel like they, ever since now they're throwing shade at Frank, and it kind of feels like they have some sort of this attitude towards him now.
Well, now I'm going to jinx them.
They're showing out. Yeah, now. So, I feel like the both sides of the ball have been really playing well, and I feel like they're at home. The offensive line has really been carrying the load, but I really like the way that they've been playing, very gritty. So I'm also gonna go with Ketchum here. I feel like Yonkers Brave has been struggling. They haven't found their groove yet. It's really tough to do that going into Ketchum, right, and going into being on a away team and finding that momentum again. So I'm gonna go with Ketchum.
All right, next up we have a AA crossover. So this is a non-league game. Yonkers Forest 2-2 at Nyack, who is 0-5, and Yonkers Forest is 4th in league. Again, this will affect the overall record, but not in league play. And when we look at last week, Yonkers Forest lost 37-6 at Mt Vernon. Nyack lost 14-7 at Brewster in a very close game. And both these teams, again, trying to turn things around. Yonkers Forest has lost 2 straight. Nyack is still looking for their first victory. And this was a tough one for me to pick because, Nyack, they've competed in games. They lost by 7 to Brewster last week. They lost by 1 to Eastchester. They lost by 14 to Harrison, and they were in that game for a long time. This is a team, again, but sometimes losing is contagious. And the reason why they're losing is offensively, they're last in A in points scored. They did not score an offensive touchdown last week. Turnovers and penalties have been absolutely killer for this offense. Defensively, they've been a pretty solid group. They have 3 games allowing 14 or less points. And looking at Yonkers Forest, Mars, what has happened to the offense? This is an offense that has a lot of high-powered weapons, but it's been a struggle the last few games. They've scored 12 points total in the last 2 games, had 6 turnovers as well in that span. And again, you're up against a solid defense in Nyack, but defensively, they've been pretty solid. So to me, again, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to go with Yonkers Forest to go on the road. Offensively, they're up against a pretty tough defense. But I think, again, they're going to do enough because Nyack's offense has really struggled with turnovers, penalties. They really shot themselves in the foot. And Yonkers Forest defense has been pretty solid. They're 7th in AA in points allowed, and they can force turnovers and negate things. So I think Yonkers Forest goes on the road here. They're going to win. It's going to be a low-scoring, tight game. I'm going Yonkers Forest.
I'm going to go with Nyack to get their first win of the season, and I think it's finally going to get here. Nyack has been battling against a lot of teams, and I know they're playing in AA, but I feel like they have talent. They just have to limit the mistakes, and they keep shooting themselves in the foot, and that's what's been costing them these games. And I feel like they're at home, perfect opportunity to kind of limit the issues. And just let your athletes play. Like, have some fun out there. And I feel like they're going to pull off this win. I'm going to go with Nyack.
Let's go to another big game, rival game. In the AA League matchup, we have Arlington 2-3 at Carmel, who is 2-2. And this is a rematch of last year's section title game where Carmel won. Carmel and Arlington are tied for 4th in league. So, again, huge opportunity. If you get that 4th spot, you get a home game, right? So, this is a big opportunity. And when you look at these 2 teams, Arlington, they lost 23-13 versus Mamaroneck. Carmel lost 37-27 at North Rockland. It's Carmel's first 2-game losing streak in a decade, since 2014, I believe. So, this feels like a colossal game right here. And this was a tough one because when you look at Carmel, again, they've gone through some injuries. One of their injuries is obviously to their best player, in Tristan Werlew. And not going to talk about the severity there, but, it's hard to replace somebody like that. So interested to see how far that goes out. But, it's probably going to rely more heavily on the passing attack now. You're going to have guys like Hibbert probably and Tamba Casau step in at the running back spot, depending on how bad the injury is. They're going to have to pick up the load running the ball, but I think they rely on the pass game probably a little bit more at this time, going with guys like White and Galbraith and some other weapons. This is still a high-powered offense. Obviously, if Tristan can't go, they're the number 1 offense in AA. That's a major blow. You don't replace that. But they still have weapons, and they can still make big plays. Defensively, they need to be better. They're not good defensively. Listen, I'm an honest guy. That's why you come to the show, guys. We want to give you the good and the bad straight from the cuff. They're 13 out of 15 in points allowed, Mars. They've allowed 30-plus points in 3 out of 4 games, right? So stopping the run is number one priority against Arlington. It always is because Arlington has gotten better at running the ball, but their offense is still 13 out of 15 in points scored. So it's a defense that's struggling. It's an offense that's inconsistent. Which one is going to bend here? And which one is going to step up? And to me, when you look at Arlington defensively, they've gotten better. They have now moved up to 8th out of 15 and points allowed. They've definitely been much more improved. They've limited the big plays. But Carmel can throw the ball too. It's not just a running team. They can throw the ball. They have weapons. And it's up to this offense, if they can run the ball and can keep Carmel's offense on the sideline, is going to be so important. With all the news on Carmel, the 2-game losing streak, I feel like people are going to be jumping off Carmel bandwagon. And I understand. I get it. But Carmel is home, right? Arlington has to go on the road into Carmel. And I still think Carmel's going to play with a lot of pride. Now, it makes me nervous about this pick because their defense has given up way too many big plays. But I'm going to go with Carmel. I think this is going to be a very close game, especially if W can't go. It's going to make it a much more even game. But I think Carmel wins at the end. I think they hit a couple big pass plays. Listen, Arlington's got some big players and guys like Tuttle who can break games open, which again, if Carmel's defense is not careful, they're going to hit these big plays and it's going to put them behind the chains. That cannot happen. So to me, I think it's going to be close. I think Carmel's going to win. I think they're going to put White on Tuttle as much as possible, and they'll make just enough plays defensively. I'm going to go with Carmel.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a tough one, but I feel like I'm also going to go with Carmel, mainly because I know that what's the stat for the 3 straight losses in a row? I really don't.
It's over a decade.
Stat.
It's over a decade.
Yeah, it's definitely. Well, I know two losses in a row was at least 2014, so it's going to have to be even longer than that. So I really don't see Carmel losing 3 straight. I know they're playing at home. The Carmel Crazies are there. The offense is still a very high-powered offense that can score a lot of points. The question is going to be about the defense and can they limit the big plays. And I feel like Arlington's offense has been too inconsistent. And I feel like because of that, I just don't know if Arlington's defense is going to be able to stop the pass attack that Carmel has. I mean, what Arlington might try to do is try to force the run. But even then, I feel like Carmel's offensive line is pretty damn good. So I feel like Carmel is going to win this one at home.
Let's go to the next one, and this is the one right before our game of the week, and that is New Rochelle 0-5 at John Jay's Fishkill, who's 0-5. This is a league matchup. Both teams trying to get their first victory. New Rochelle lost 28-7 versus Scarsdale, which was close for a while. It was like 14-7 at half, I'm pretty sure. And John Jay's Fishkill lost a heartbreaker, 22-21 versus Suffern at the end of the game. I think it was 40 seconds left. They gave up a score and 2-point conversion. But both teams trying to get their first win. And, when you hear the names New Rochelle and John Jay's Fishkill, you don't think about winless teams. So it's a very unusual year. But someone's got to win this, right? And so when I look at this game, New Rochelle's offense has been in struggle. They're last in AA in points scored. Fernan and Maple are their big playmakers. Can they run the ball consistently against John Jay, who offensively, listen, they've scored 21 points in 2 straight games. Patridge, I think, has made some big plays for them, receiving the ball, running the ball. We know about some of their other receivers in Johnson. But turnovers have been an absolute killer for this team. Like, devastating turnovers at terrible moments. Now, turnovers are good in no moments, but they turn over in critical situations that have killed John Jay because they have shown that they can move the ball. Now, defensively, they're also 11 out of 15 in points allowed. Again, when I feel like 2 teams are even, I'm going to lean a little bit to the home team. I'm going to go with John Jay. I think they played a little bit better overall football than New Rochelle on both sides of the ball. I think they've been more consistent moving the football. But if they can just limit turnovers, I think they can score some points here. New Rochelle's offense has been very on and off. So I'm going to go with John Jay at home to win this one. But again, to me, this was a tough pick.
Yeah, I feel like John Jay is also going to be my pick because I've seen them in close games against really good opponents. I mean, Suffern, obviously, nail-biter game at the end in which they lost. I mean, they came back against Carmel, too, and I mean, this is Carmel with W, and you've seen John Jay be scrappy with a lot of teams. It was almost like the same situation with Nyack, where they lost games in really close fashion, and I just feel like they just didn't get the luck enough hold the ball at the end to finish the game out. And New Rochelle just feels like they're struggling to find their identity. Like I'm not sure if they're just making too many mistakes. They're trying to see if they can run the ball. They have some speed, but they're not really just being consistent enough. They had a brawl with Scarsdale. Like they battled
in the first half,
first half of the game. And Scarsdale is obviously the number one team in AA right now. So like
that's your opinion. Mamaroneck is mine currently, but
I'm gonna go with Scarsdale as my number one. But the fact is that they're a good team and they were competitive, right? But I'm gonna go with John Chase Fishkill. I agree with you. They're at home. I saw a lot more games where they were closer and they could have pulled off the win, but they just couldn't at the end. So I feel like they're gonna win this one at home and get their first win in the season.
All right, Mars, with that, let's go to our game of the week. And this one was an easy one. This is a AA league matchup. You have Scarsdale, who is 4-0, at North Rockland, who is 3-2. Scarsdale currently sitting number 1 in the league, in League A. North Rockland is sitting at number 3 in the league, in League A. And when you look at these two teams historically, Scarsdale is 5-3 versus North Rockland. They're on a 4-game winning streak, which is North Rockland, which I found to be pretty interesting. But they have not played each other, Mars, since 2017. So it has been a while since these two teams have played. And what we'll do is we'll start with Scarsdale and then go to North Rockland and then want to talk a little bit of film between these two teams. And we're actually going to show their offenses. So let's start with Scarsdale. They won 28-7 at New Rochelle last week. They're 3-0 on the road. This has been one of the big surprises. They have key wins, Mars. They have won at Mamaroneck. They have won at Suffern. They've been probably the biggest surprise this season out of the entire section, if I'm being quite frank. And offensively, this is the number 4 offense in points scored. They have scored 63 points in the last 2 games. And we know option football is their number 1 priority, which is funny because back when we played, option football was more prevalent, right? But now with teams getting more into the spread stuff, and there's still a lot of wing T stuff, but into the spreads action, the option has become like a red herring, a kind of unicorn in Section 1. And since that's the case, not enough defenses see the option where they're familiar with it. And I've seen it on tape, Mars, you've seen it. Defenses are struggling to defend the option, and it's been to Scarsdale's benefit. This is they've run the option very well, but they also have primary focus run designed to certain backs, just like other standard offenses. But it's so interesting to watch this team, and it starts with their fullback in Gilligan, who is a stud. He is a downhill runner. He is difficult to tackle solo. You have multiple guys who have to bring him down. He's had 5 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. Quarterback Ebner Boris deserves a lot of credit. He's orchestrated this thing very well, and he's an athletic and pretty decent-sized kid. And then you have these backs in Krupkin, Brennan. They can, do the pitch man with, and they can do counters, and they show that speed that they can hit big plays. And then you have this wide receiver in Vibert, right, who, again, play action, throwing him the ball, is a big play guy, also as a returner. But, again, offense has been pretty impressive. They moved all the way up to 4 after scoring a lot of points these last 2 weeks. But Mars, they have the number 1 defense in AA, and that is the calling card on why I think they are where they are. They've allowed 14 or less in points in all 4 games this season. They are not big, but they can get after you, especially when you get closer to the goal line. So, what can they do versus North Rockland? Well, the key is, again, controlling the clock. North Rockland has a high-powered offense. They have a lot of speed. The option game, staying ahead of the chains, keep churning those yards, holding on to the ball, shorten this game. That is going to be such a key factor for Scarsdale in this one. And defensively, keeping the game in between the tackles. They have a veteran linebacker core. They have this small defensive tackle in Duval who can really move and make plays. But keep the game between the tackles, because if North Rockland gets to the second level, Mars, there's not many people in the section who can catch these backs because they're too fast, like guys like Jaquan Johnson. So, big time speed there. Mars, thoughts on Scarsdale before we get to North Rockland?
I mean, it's really impressive that, Scarsdale has been consistent. They've done the option offense since we were in high school. And, it's kind of crazy to see, like you mentioned before, not a lot of teams really know how to defend it, right? And it's a lot of it's just disciplined football, just knowing your reads, knowing who you have to go after, and teams still struggle, right? And it feels like it's kind of interesting because it's like that retro. I've seen a lot of kids come up to me and say, "Hey, how about Scarsdale? they're going retro style. And I go, yeah, it still has a
Man, that
still
makes us
has
feel
some
old, man.
purpose,
They're calling that retro.
and calling it retro offenses out there. And I go, yeah, it still works, man. So it's really how efficient you are with it. And Scarsdale has been showing that, and defensively
Yeah.
they've been really impressive.
Yep, they run that veer pretty damn well. And I also like that they do kind of these, they'll motion, they won't motion, they'll do some whirly motion, which is like they'll start motioning, then they'll go back. So to me, if you're going to do the option, you got to do all the bells and whistles with it. But let's move to North Rockland. They won 37-27 versus Carmel in a huge victory at home. They have won 2 straight. They are 2-1 at home. They have key wins versus Carmel and Arlington. And this is the number 3 offense in points scored in AA. They have scored 86 points, Morris, in the last 2 games. And it starts with their running back in Jaquan Johnson. He has over 300 total yards and 7 touchdowns these last 2 games. He has been sensational. This young man is explosive, and he's been dominant. And another impressive thing is their quarterback, Perini. I think, the passing game has always been the last couple of years that North Rockland has been trying to find that consistency in. And Perini has been pretty good these last couple of games. 4 touchdowns the last 2 games and has limited the turnovers, which is big. You've seen Jaslow. He had a nice touchdown reception last week. Other wide receivers make some big plays. Now, they did have 2 turnovers total last week, which is, again, have been an Achilles heel for North Rockland at times. But when they limit the turnovers, Mars, this is a team that can score points. This offensive line has been moving people. This has been an impressive offense to watch. And to me, a key on them for offensively, I really like how they condense formations, Mars, to condense the defense in and then try to attack the outside. That to me is, you saw it last week versus Carmel, condensing that defense and then getting a speed back, try to get towards the outside, get to that second level and see if people can catch them. I think it works well, and I think that's what they're going to have to do versus Scarsdale. They want to make it a track meet. Get ahead of Scarsdale. Get Scarsdale into passing situations where they're down and need to catch up, because that's not what the option is designed for. The option is designed to control the game, so that is a big key offensively. Defensively, they are 5th in 15 out of 15 teams in points allowed defending the option, and it starts at all 3 levels, Mars. So can they play disciplined football for all 4 quarters? That's going to be the big one. Starts with the D-line, then the linebackers in Prisco, and then in the secondary, that's a physical secondary in Johnson, St. Fleur, Lawrence. So they have the personnel, North Rockland, but can they execute? That's going to be the key for them. And the big thing is, Mars, when you play the option, and I'll let you talk in about 1 second, what do you want to do when you play an option team? You want to get that option team into 3rd and 5+ yards. That is the key. Get them into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5.5, 3rd and 7, because that's where the option, again, they're going to have to do things that they don't want to do, which is passing the ball. And that's not something that they're designed to do at a high clip, right? They want to stay ahead of the chain. So those are my big things. Mars, tell me about North Rockland and the matchup you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see how this game turns out, because North Rockland has been very impressive when it comes to their offensive firepower. I mean, they have a lot of speed. They've been scoring a whole lot of points on teams the last few games, and I'm really wondering to see how this matchup between the North Rockland offense versus Scarsdale defense is going to be, because as much as Scarsdale doesn't have massive size, they have that grit, right? And I'm wondering to see how they're going to be able to really slow down this North Rockland offensive backs and receivers, because they just have such speed that they're almost like game breakers. If you get to past the second level, it's almost difficult. It's just completely impossible to catch up to them.
Yeah.
So I'm really wondering to see how that's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in this, we're going to talk about film, and I want to look at both offenses and really focus in on the run game for both of them, because I did show some North Rockland last week with Jaquan Johnson and their pass attack. I want to focus in on their run game, and I'm going to focus in on Scarsdale's option. So let me pull up the tape, and let me make sure you guys can see it. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Perfect. Let me get into the full screen so you guys don't see other. But let's start with Scarsdale. And I mentioned before, Scarsdale thrives on the option offense. And you'll see they'll have tight end wing. They'll go in some T stuff. They'll have some double wing, double slot. But they want to get ahead of the chains. You can see the down and distance, 3rd and 2. Right? This is where they want to be. 3rd down, less than 5 yards. 2nd down and 5, and et cetera, et cetera. So on this play, you have a tight end wing to the right. You have this slot to the left, which is pretty far back. It's almost acting like a T, but he's pretty far back. And this is what the option is, right? They have multiple options they can hand the ball off to. It starts with the fullback in Gilligan, who's been a stud. And then what they're focusing on is this defender that I've highlighted. And you're going to see they got to get a double team. They want to get these guys up to the backers. And they're really going to put these guys, really a first-level defender in a bind and then a second-level defender in a bind if it goes beyond that. And the first-level defender they're looking at is this guy right here. So this is where the option's at. You can see the blocking scheme, and it starts with the fullback. He's the first one who gets that first option. And he's a stud. You can see that defensive end comes up the field, and it's a give rep. Right? So he's going to give the ball to him. If you don't hit this kid early, it's hard to stop his momentum. You're getting some pretty good push here, but this defensive tackle actually does a pretty good job of anchoring down and actually doesn't give him a clean lane. But watch how this young man in Gilligan turns his legs. Right? There's not a lot of room there. He finds a little space. Look at him turn his legs and just pops right out of the hole right there. I mean, you've seen that. We have seen that all season. Where even when he anchors down, he still finds little lanes. You can see this offensive line continues to move their feet, and he gets these churning yards. And that's what you need at the first point of attack for your option is a fullback who can run aggressively. Who can get those ugly yards, we like to call it. So he's the first line. Then the second line is the quarterback. Right, and here we go again. Tight end. Now the wing is a little bit farther behind the tight end. Kind of gives a signal on which direction they want to go at times. But you're going to see. Option the other way. You're going to go to the weak side this time. Again, you're going to get a double team. You're going to get this slot trying to get up to this backer. And these wide receivers, they want to run off the corner. And it's going to be so important when I show you the next play on why that is. But this is the option. Same thing the other way. Here he is reading the first line defender, this defensive end. If he crashes down onto the fullback, and what we mean when he goes down the line or attacks the fullback directly, if he runs up the field, it's a give. When he runs down the line, now the quarterback's going to pull. And that's where his eyes are focused on, if you could see that. Then there's the second level defender, which is the first contain. So look at the guy squeeze down. Okay, quarterback realized, all right, I got to pull it. Now he's going to go to the second read. And if he attacks the quarterback, he should pitch it. If the guy plays in between the quarterback and the pitch man, quarterback's going to keep it. And so, again, the defender, tough to see on this angle whether he kind of split towards the outside. But the quarterback's actually going to give a little fake here. I mean, this young man's got some good size to him. He's athletic. His little fake to the outside, and look at him, just blow right past him. Again, solid size to him. Has orchestrated this option very well and leads to a big chunk play. The final leg of this race is the pitch man. Here we go again, similar formation. 2nd down and 5. And we're going to run the option. And I just want to focus in on this. Again, double teams. Up to the backer. Up to the backer. And we're going to run the option. First level defender, highlighted here. Second level defender, highlighted right here. And watch how these guys orchestrate. The first, a good ride. Crashes down, he's going to pull. Second one, attacks the quarterback from the inside. Pitches it to the outside. But if you look back, look at there's no corner. Because the wide receiver is running him off. And that's designed that way. So the corner, again, he's playing man on that wide receiver. If you don't have a second edge defender, a safety, a corner is squatting, who's defending that? He gets to the outside. And now no one's around. And now look at the receiver blocking down the field. Leading to these huge plays. Again, you need to have multiple guys who can be your first level defender, taking away the fullback, then taking away the quarterback. Then there's that third option. How do you defend that? They're going to be really interested to see what North Rockland does there. Then I go to North Rockland, and then they have this stud who they love to give the ball to. And North Rockland, like I talked about last week, guys, you know, they like to use a lot of motions. They like to mess with defenders' eyes. They like to use the motions to create leverage. And I really like how they came out with these condensed formations and tried to run to the outside, right? Because it squeezes this defense and then gives their stud running backs who are fast a lot of real estate to work with. And you're going to see, look at the option here. They option this guy this way because, again, they want this edge defender to widen out. And they're going to pull a lineman and try to kick him out so that they can create a lane. And that's kind of the goal of this motion. They're going to fake a jet, hand off inside. Look how wide the defender gets. And that creates this wide open C gap here. So if you can get a block on this edge guy, you get this H-back pulling in, a block on this linebacker, it's going to create a lane. Look at that lane right there. And now we get to that second level. That's a tough tackle for a corner. And it's see you later. Again, North Rockland using motions to try to create leverage, try to create space with these condensed formations. Problem also, again, Jaquan Johnson's a very good player. So even when you defend it pretty well, he can still hurt you. And if you see Carmel, they want to stunt. They're going to bring in the linebacker. They're going to bring in this backside linebacker off the edge. They're trying to generate pressure. You can see they got 2 receivers to the left and this H-back. They're going to try to pitch it out to that side because they believe, again, there's no force defender out on the edge. They could get to the outside. But Carmel comes with a lot of speed here, right? It feels like it's open right out of the gate. But as the play develops, watch Carmel rally. See this defensive end getting to the outside. But then Jaquan Johnson makes things happen. Again, look at it. This looks well defended. Could be a loss right here. But then look at that juke, right? Boom, juke. And then if you're not rallying from backside, he can hit these big plays. The young man shows a lot of speed, has been really tremendous so far this season. All right, Mars, I talked a lot right there. I hope Chad enjoys the little film session, showing you guys what I see when, studying these teams. But Mars, who do you think is going to win this matchup and why?
So when I was looking at this matchup, the biggest thing I noticed right off the bat is obviously how well North Rockland's been playing, especially on the offensive side. And they have a lot of playmakers, and they have some real speed that is unmatched in Section 1 AA. And then I kind of look back and say, well, they've scored 86 points in the last 2 games. And those games, they played against Carmel, which is, the second lowest in points allowed. I think it's 13 out of 15.
Third
and
lowest.
Arlington now is 8 out of 15. So against average to one of the lower defenses in AA, they were able to score 86 points.
Yeah.
But what happens when you play against the number 1 defense in Section 1 AA? And the question is going to be, how does Scarsdale react to that? Are they going to be able to slow down this high-powered offense and allow for their option style offense to slow the game pacing to match their feel? And because of that, I think Scarsdale is going to win this game because their defense is going to be the main cog of this system. And then once they get the ball back in their possession, they're going to own the time of possession and slow the game down. As much as North Rockland has the skill guys to break open games, I just don't know how many opportunities they're going to get in this game as a whole. And that for that reason, I'm going to go with Scarsdale.
Very interesting pick, Mars. And I got to tell you, this game is really going to be determined how it starts. Because if Scarsdale gets the ball, controls the clock, and even maybe they don't even score a touchdown, but they take a chunk out of the time and then kick it back over to North Rockland. It's really, if they can limit North Rockland's possession, similar to what Mamaroneck did to North Rockland, they have a real good chance of winning this game. But if North Rockland gets the ball first, or they get a 3-and-out on Scarsdale, get the ball and score, and they get ahead of Scarsdale, that's where things could get ugly for Scarsdale and get a little, in troubled waters. But I'm going to agree with you, Mars. I am actually going to go with Scarsdale too. I think the formula is there for them, and I think they're going to execute it. I think they're going to control the time of possession. Again, Jaquan Johnson's going to get his, but just limit those back-breaking big play touchdowns is Scarsdale's best bait. Keep everything in between the tackle box. And I think they're going to do it. I think this is going to be a very fun, interesting game. Scarsdale's going to have to go on the road to do this, but I am going to go with Scarsdale. I've been very impressed with these two teams. I think these are two of the best teams in AA that I've watched so far this year. So such a fun matchup, but I am going to go with Scarsdale. Man, it's going to be fun. That's a very fun game. But with that,
I feel like that's going to be really impressive to see what happens there.
Let's go to A now. Let's move to A. And again, we just did AA. Thank you guys so much as always. Make sure you guys get into that poll, decide on who you think is going to win picks last week. Mars won it last week. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so yet already. And let us know who you think is going to win some of these matchups in the comment section, or hit us with any questions that we'll answer. But let's keep it going, Mars. Next up, another very interesting game. A matchup, Fox Lane 2-2 at Brewster, who is 3-2. And I mentioned, in the start of the show, got to get into the top 4 in each league. And Fox Lane currently is 5th in the league, had a huge victory last week, which I'm about to talk about. And Brewster is tied for second with Mahopac, but they lost to them. So they lose that tiebreaker. So to me, technically, they're third. But Fox Lane, they won 28-25 versus Yorktown. It is last week. The first time they've beaten Yorktown since 2003. They were down 18-7 at half. Right? So this is a team that clawed its way back, had the upset victory, massive victory. And, Brewster last week won 14-7 versus Nyack. And this was an interesting game to break down, Mars, because Fox Lane is an inconsistent team. At times, they can be extremely impressive. You've seen that. They've gotten wins now over Yorktown and Eastchester, which are two impressive victories. But they start off games very slow. They started off slow versus Mahopac, and they clawed their way back. But if they started faster versus Mahopac, they could have won that game too. Now, they started slow against Yorktown, and they did come back. They played a little, they started off a little slow versus Eastchester. So this team has fight. There's no question. This is the number 6 offense in points scored. Their quarterback in Cernick has made some big plays over the last couple of weeks. He had 278 yards last week and 3 touchdowns. They did have 2 INTs, and Rudolph was tremendous. And they got some weapons. I mean, I mentioned Rudolph at 158 yards, Mamola, Keller, and then their running back in Connors. I mean, they got the athletes, and this offensive line, I thought had a really strong second half. Defensively, they're 12 out of 13. They've allowed 24 plus points out of 3 out of 4 games. Had a strong, again, second half last week, but the first halves have been rough at times for them. They've given up big plays and they've turned the ball over. Now, when you look at Brewster, offensively, they're very inconsistent. I mean, they have, They have scored at least 2 offensive touchdowns in 3 straight games, but, at times this offense has a tough time moving the ball, but they have the number 1 defense in A, Mars. They've allowed 2 offensive touchdowns in 4 games. This is one of the harder games I've had to pick. This feels like a week of hard games. But I tell you what, winning against Yorktown is a momentum builder for Fox Lane. And if Fox Lane can get off to a better start, I think they make enough plays offensively. And this defense, I think, if they're very aggressive, can slow down the run game of Brewster, which will put Brewster in a tough spot. I know Brewster's got the number 1 defense. Their defense has been very impressive. And to me, the reason why they're here is because of that very strong defensive play with some occasional strong offensive play. But I'm going to go with Fox Lane. I think Fox Lane is kind of that comeback kid. They have to start faster than what they've done against Yorktown and Mahopac. And I think they will. I'm going to go with Fox Lane to go on the road and pull the upset and win this game.
Well, this was definitely tough for me, mainly because obviously Fox Lane had a very impressive comeback victory against Yorktown and against a really good opponent. But early in the season, they did lose to Mahopac, and Mahopac was their biggest advantage to Fox Lane was their size. And I feel like Brewster has a comparable size to Mahopac. Not saying they are as big because Mahopac was bigger, but they were able to stay tough against Mahopac mainly because they could be sized up to them and be aggressive. And that was a game that was really close. And I feel like for that reason, I feel like Brewster's going to win this game because as much as their offense is very inconsistent, Fox Lane's defense is very inconsistent as well. And I just feel like when you have a strong defense against a solid offense, the defense usually wins. And I mainly because of the fact that now you have size, it's going to be hard to push around Brewster. And, you need to develop the run game. And I feel like if you're going to have to pass the ball all the way down the field, it's going to be really tough, especially when you have a lot of good pass rushers at Brewster. So I'm going to go with Brewster in this one.
Next up, we have a league matchup. Lakeland 1-4 at John Jay Cross River, who's 1-4. Both teams looking for their first league win, and Lakeland lost 34-0 versus Mahopac. John Jay Cross River lost 46-7 versus Somers. And I got to tell you, listen, we try to be honest. I thought both teams, Lakeland played a strong first half versus Mahopac and then got run off the field. They really got run down. They were up against a team that's much bigger than them, and they pushed them around. And offensively, they really struggled. They had 2 turnovers last week. They've scored 7 or less out of 3 out of the last 4 games. They're going to have to they could have an opportunity to run the ball a lot better this week because John Jay Cross River's defense is the worst in A. They've been really bad at stopping the run, haven't really played with like a major edge defensively, and they need to badly. Offensively, their young quarterback in Curd got hurt. Maybe their quarterback Machado is going to have to step in, and he's played quarterback last year. So, they have the weapons offensively. I think they can move the ball. Defensively is the big one for me. I thought John Jay got embarrassed They were down 28-0 against Somers. I know Somers is very good, but 28-0 in the first quarter, that's going into the game not believing you can slow them down. And so I think John Jay is going to play with a little bit more of an edge this week. A bit of a redemption for them this week. Listen, I like Lakeland, at the linebacker spot. They have Oliva, who's been a big playmaker for them. But I think John Jay Cross River plays a little more of an edge. They make some plays offensively. And I think they're going to win this game at home.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with John Jay Cross River. At home, you have obviously in front of your home crowd. Not sure if this is homecoming or not, but I'm sure that this is.
It's not,
especially as you get later. Yeah, it's not homecoming, but as you get into the senior nights or whatever it may be, home game, all your fans are there. You're playing against an opponent that kind of has not really established what they are. They've been struggling really all year when it comes to their offense and defense, and I feel like John Jay, even though their defense is ranked the worst in Section 1A, their offense has weapons, right? They have some speed and they have the ability to make some plays, and they've scored some points. So I feel like John Jay Cross River has that advantage. I'm going to go with them.
This is another major matchup, and that is Yorktown 3-2 at Mahopac, who's 4-1 league play. Yorktown is 4th in the league. Mahopac is tied for 2nd with Brewster, but they beat them. And listen, I got some cold water I got to throw on a team that I have put high praise on, Mars, for a lot of this season. And you know what? Let me start with the home team, because Mahopac, again, they pushed Lakeland around, and we've talked about their size and strength for a while now. Now, they ran for over 200 yards last week. This offensive line and tight ends deserve a lot of credit. They push people around. Clifford is a big back who can run downhill. And guys like, Varley, Benavega, Ulaj on that offensive line have really dictated things. And their offensive scheme is not complex, but it's just going to run downhill on you and see if you could slow it down. And then take, some shots down the field out of play action, whether it's some bootleg out of the eye or some double moves out of some of the spread. But it's focused in on the run game, and it has been successful for them. And defensively, if your offensive line isn't going to be physical, they're going to take over the game. Varley has really disrupted things, creates a lot of pressure. And if your guards are not prepared to block that young man, he's going to wreak havoc. And, that's the formula for Mahopac, and it's been working for them. For Yorktown, I feel they've gotten embarrassed last week. I mean, Fox Lane is a team that doesn't give up, but you were up 18-7 at half, and you got outscored 21-7 in the second half, and you're 0-2 on the road. And Yorktown was high on my list. I think, what was it? They're the third best team I had in A, number 1 defense in my top units ranking, and this defense had a bad second half and a really bad fourth quarter. They gave up way too many 3rd and 4th downs. At times struggled to stop the run, but it was the pass game. Just, you get into these 2nd, 3rd and longs, and you lost practically every 50-50 ball. And even when they brought pressures, they allowed the quarterback to escape the pocket, right? So there were some big no-nos by this defense, and it was eye-opening to me. With all that said, they still have the number 3 offense. They've scored 25-plus points in 4 out of 5 games, and this is going to be a real serious, how real is Yorktown game for me. And if you could tell by my action, I am going to pick Yorktown. I think a lot of people are going to jump off the bandwagon, and I get it. They dropped on my rankings this week because this was eye-opening, the second half. And, I have respect for the coaches there. I know they have some talented players. Caden Gonzalez is a big-time player. But this offensive line, this is going to be the game to see how serious they are. And for this defense, how serious they are. And I think they're going to make just enough plays. This is going to be a tight game. I think Yorktown pulls it off in the end, and I think Yorktown gets redemption this week against on the road in a hostile environment. This is a prove-it game. How serious is Yorktown? Are they going to be compared to those big contenders? Because, again, if they come out and have a second half like they did, they're going to lose. It's that simple. That's why they lost last week. But I think they have a better, more consistent, more complete game this week. I'm going Yorktown.
So this is definitely a tough one for me, mainly because, I look at both teams and, Yorktown was, and I agree with you, they were probably one of the top teams in 1A that we had preseason said that they were going to be, a really good team, and then we saw their game against Somers and said, "Oh wow, they are definitely now
Harrison
up
and
there."
Somers.
Harrison game and Somers game said, "Hey, they are legit." And obviously they got embarrassed by Fox Lane, and now the question is going to be, what team is going to show up for this one? And the same thing you look at then in Mahopac and say, if you think about it, Mahopac has found the luck that when the game got tight, they found a way to pull off the win, right? And that has been the case for the last few games. I mean, not against Lakeland, but against Brewster, against Fox Lane. They've had games that were really close and got to the end, and they found a way to win. And that, obviously, you have to give them credit for that. But the question is then going to be, are they legit? Because now you're playing a Yorktown team that has talent, that has had some really good wins, and they just lost the game, and they're going to come into this game and say, we need to win to set ourselves right. And Mahopac is playing at home, right? And so when I think about that, I'm going to go with Mahopac. I think Mahopac at home, momentum's on their side. They've been winning these close games, and I feel like they just feel like they're on a roll. And I feel like it has really a lot to do with their offensive line. Play has been really, really good. They've been moving people around. They've been kind of bullying people up front. And, now the question is going to be, can Yorktown's defensive line, a gritty group of guys, really stand up to that, right? So I feel like it's going to be an interesting battle. This is like a rivalry game in the old A's, the old Mahopac fans of the old.
It was in Double A, it wasn't an A.
Games. Well, yeah, Yorktown was that jumping around A, Double A, but back in the old Mahopacians do not like Yorktown, so this is a old school rivalry game, so should be interesting. But I'm going to pick Mahopac here.
Yeah, it's a huge game because it probably, to me, most likely clinches this number 2 spot in A. The winner of this puts themselves in a real good spot to win the number 2 spot. All right, let's move to the next one, and a huge rivalry game. This is an A-League matchup. Clarkstown North 2-3 at Clarkstown South, who's 2-3. Clarkstown North is 5th. Clarkstown South is 4th in their League B. Both looking for their first league win, and that's a big one because it's that 4th spot, Mars. And historically, Clarkstown South 17-5 versus Clarkstown North. They have won 3 straight in this matchup. Clarkstown North, they won 35-28 versus White Plains. Clarkstown South lost 21-0 at Rye. And again, this is like the good offense versus the good defense matchup, right? Clarkstown North, 5th in points scored in A. They have 3 games scoring 28-plus points. The quarterback, Kavanaugh, has 4 total touchdowns last week. And they want to get out on the edge, and they have guys like Gabay and Garcia who are playmakers. And Clarkstown South defense has been strong. They're tied for 6th in points allowed. It was really 7-0 at halftime versus Rye. I mean, the defense kept them in it for a long time, and if they can stop the run game, they're going to have a big chance. And Artie Zone, Sparing, Tito have all made plays for this defense. The question is the other side for both teams. Clarkstown South has not scored an offensive touchdown in 3 straight games. I mean, yes, you're playing good teams. Yes, you're on the road. But to not score an offensive touchdown in 3 games, something has to change here, right? They have to change something. And Clarkstown North, defensively, they've been better the last 2 weeks, but they give up a lot of yards and big plays. So with that said, I'm going to go with South. I feel like this is the week. The offense, they have to. If they're going to win, they got to score an offensive touchdown. And I think that's what occurs this time. I think the offense does get going. Big rivalry game. Emotion is going to be very high. You're going to see the offense play with a little more edge this week. This defense has been strong, right? If the offense can match that, Clarkstown South can now start churning some victories. They played some close games, but offensively, they just turn the ball over and haven't been on the same page. I think it changes this week. I'm going Clarkstown South.
This is definitely a tough one for me because, both teams showed they had some really close games against some opponents, and and I feel like South has kind of just had the tougher opponents up to date to this point. And I feel like they've had some really close games. And even though Rye is, in my opinion, if it's not Somers, it's Rye that is the top team. They played tough against them, a lot tougher than what a lot of people thought they were going to do. And I feel like because of that, it kind of shows me that they're grinding for that playoff spot. And I feel like South at home, I know it's not that far away, but in a rivalry game, they've historically have done very well in this rivalry game. So I'm also going to go with South to win to make it 18-5. They've won 3 straight. I feel like they're going to win 4 straight.
Let's talk about another one before we get to our game of the week, and that is Rye 5-0 at Eastchester is 3-2. Another very good matchup. Rye is sitting number 1 in League B. Eastchester is sitting 3rd in the league, and Rye won 21-0 versus Clarkstown South. Eastchester lost 24-0 at Harrison. Now listen, Eastchester's offense, it has been very inconsistent of late. They are 11 out of 13 in points scored. They only have one game where they've scored 20 points this year. They are a bit beat up. And it starts with the run game. They're going to have to be able to run the ball versus Rye if they're going to have a chance in this one, because they can't go back and throw the ball as much as Rye throws the ball. So keeping the game low, this defense is still a very good defense. They're 4th in points allowed. They cannot give up the big plays like they did last week because this Rye offense is very high-powered. I am going to go with Rye. This offense is number 2 in points scored. They've scored 30-plus in 4 out of 5 games. They started off slow last week. It was only 7-0 at half. Quarterback Miller still had 245 yards and 2 touchdowns by the end. Giuliano, 60 yards rushing, and Schumacher, he had 152, had a long touchdown, both touchdown receptions. I mean, the list goes on with Kesner and Fenton. A lot of weapons that Eastchester has to deal with. And this defense, I think, can limit big plays, but it's the Rye defense doesn't get talked about a lot. They're number 3 in points allowed. They're a strong unit. Multiple guys, Kesner, Wilmerth, Brady, Strazzini, Sass. They have a cast of guys who makes plays, and they're not talked about quite often enough. And I think this is the kind of game you'll see them showcased against an Eastchester offense that has struggled a little bit. I'm going to go with Rye.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to go with Rye. I feel like as a team, they've been playing so well. And last game was the only one that I saw that they kind of slowed up on. I mean, most of every game I've seen, they've just been dominating, and obviously Miller has been. I made jokes last week. He was playing better than Aaron Rodgers was, and his QBR was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But he's just continuing his progression, right? He's 245 yards with 2 touchdowns last week, and you just have so many weapons on this team that it's really tough, especially on the defensive side. And Eastchester has been struggling on offense. That I just feel like it's, even though the defense is good, I just feel like their offense has been struggling to put up points. For that reason, I'm going to go with Rye.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our game of the week for A. And this one, it's a rematch of last year's section title game, and it's a non-league game, but a huge barometer on where these two teams are, and that is Harrison 4-1 at Somers, who's 5-0. Again, non-league crossover. Somers is 1st in League A. Harrison is 2nd in League B. And let's start with Harrison. They won 24-0 versus Eastchester. They have won 4 straight Mars. This offense, without Joe Krupe, it's not as clean and consistent and explosive. Obviously missing one of the best players in the class. But it's been a group effort, and multiple guys have stepped up. And the first one is Dante Lanza. He had 2 touchdowns last week. You line him up at running back, you line him up at quarterback, line him up at receiver. And to me, he is the spark plug. Big player for them on both sides of the ball. But things that have stepped up, I mean, we knew about Dante Lanza, but guys like Olsey and Badner. Badner had 2 touchdowns last week. That's huge. They need other guys to make big plays on offense, and they're going to need it versus this Somers defense. Matt McCoy had a receiving touchdown. And I think what they're going to do, you run out of the spread, you run the option, and they're going to have to go with, again, option without motioning, twist option. They got to throw the sink at Somers because Somers is really going to be, very aggressive against the run, saying, hey, we don't believe you can throw on us. So they're going to have to take advantage of man coverage, throwing the ball. Banner's really going to have to step up. And the way they're going to, win this game is by trying to keep it as low scoring as possible with the number 2 defense. They have the number 2 defense. They have been dominant versus the run. They've allowed 6 points or less in 3 straight games. Last week they forced a couple turnovers. They're going to have to win in what I call light box. And that means, when Somers goes into the spread, they're going to have to put more defensive backs out to try to slow down Palazzolo and bracket him. And it means that internally, they might have one less guy in the box, which means that Somers might want to run the ball against that, right, based on the numbers. And they're going to have to win those matchups in the front 7. Ali Damaj, who's probably a runner, he's probably leading case for Defensive Player of the Year on the defensive line. He has been absolutely tremendous. But Haynes, Nicolaj, Olsey, Marisi, they have to win in some of these light box situations where Somers is going to try to run the ball against these light boxes with their stud backs. And they're going to have to win if they're going to keep in it. Because if they go heavy boxes and they play man coverage on Palazzolo, they're going to give up big plays. It's hard to play man on him. So those are my two keys. I mean, they got to shorten the game, and they got to win those light box matchups against the run, get Somers behind the chain so that this defensive line can rush the passer. That's got to be the big thing for them. Thoughts on Harrison, Mars?
And Harrison's really impressive, and I feel like they defensively, I've been probably the most impressed with how they've been playing. And very tough, and they've really been slowing down the run, and their ability to force turnovers has been great for them. I feel like it's going to really be an important feature of theirs to be able to match up with this Somers offensive line that we consider to be one of the best, if not the best, in Class A. And I feel like if they can match, like you said before, if they can match up to them and be able to win even in those light boxes or even just winning those one-on-ones, then it could really put them in that advantage, right? Especially getting their offense back on the field. Because Somers has, their defense is still good, but they are 8 out of 13 in points allowed, right? And they have given up points from teams before. So it's get your offense back on the field. You have a scheme. You have things that work. Get your guys more opportunities.
Yeah, and let's talk about Somers. I mean, they won 46-7 at John Jay. They have some real impressive wins on the resume. Win against Ramapo in Jersey. Yorktown at Mahopac, Fox Lane. This is the number one offense, Mars. They have 4 40-plus point games this year. And last week, it was the run game dominating. And this is a team that can beat you multiple ways. Kelly had 153 yards and 1 touchdown. Quarterback Iglesias continues to be very impressive. 4 total touchdowns. We know about Palazzolo that I mentioned. But other guys, Whipple and Violante making plays last week. But to me, I think Somers wants to create those one-on-one matchups. They'll come out with heavy looks. I think they'll bring in, again, 2 backs, trying to see how Harrison's going to play, their stud receiver, then move Palazzolo around. If you're going to play man on him, they're going to attack that for obvious reasons. And then when you give them light boxes, like you saw versus, Mahopac, they'll run the ball. And this offensive line, they rotate a bunch of guys, have been very impressive. And we're going to see who wins that matchup because Iglesias can run and Kelly is a stud running back. So you're going to give them light boxes. They want to take advantage of that. But where they hit the home runs is if they see you're playing man coverage on Palazzolo, they're going to attack for obvious reasons. One of the fastest in the class. So to me, offensively, again, they're in my keys. I think that you spread them out, try to get those light boxes, run, and then in those condensed formations where Harrison starts bringing those defenders in the box, take those shots down the field with Palazzolo and see if they can cover them. Defensively, stop the run. Right, that's the big. To me, it's you see Dante Lanza wherever he is, you got to bracket and force other guys to beat you like their quarterback in Badner. Prove, hey, can you throw? We're going to play man coverage on you. Can you throw the ball consistently against us? And if they do that, then you tip your hat. But that's what you want to prove. Don't let Dante Lanza beat us. Let other guys beat us. And that to me is the big thing. Mars, tell me what your matchup is and talk about Somers, and then we'll do a little film.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to really be this Somers offensive line against obviously this Harrison defensive front. I mean, like you said, whether it's going to be in condensed boxes or in more spread or light boxes, it's really going to be up to the Somers offensive line to really own that line of scrimmage. If they do, then this game will be over sooner rather than later, right? And I feel like they've been able to do that once they've been on the groove, because I know in the beginning of the year, they've started games really slow, and then they eventually realize that they're Somers and they can push people around. But when they start off right off the gate and they say, we're going to bully you, right? And they start getting in that groove, games have been over by halftime. So it's really going to be interesting to see how Somers' offensive line, how they're going to come out and play, because they are considered to be one of the best, if not the best, front in Class A.
Yeah, and for the film, I want to focus in on Dante Lanza, how impressive he is, and some of the other guys, like their quarterback in Badner. And for Somers, I'm going to focus in on their passing game, because we have looked at their rush attack, mixed with Iglesias last time. I'll focus in on Palazzolo and their pass attack. And so let me bring up Huddle again, and if you guys can see my screen. And I want to start with the road team in Harrison. And the first thing you're looking at, again, they're going to have to throw the kitchen sink, I think, at Somers. But this is Dante Lanza at the quarterback spot. And when he's at this spot, they'll run quarterback counters, but they'll run the option. And that's going to be really big, in my opinion. You got to keep Somers on edge. And you can see he's located right here. They're going to just run the simple option. You're going to get guys up to the second level. They're going to be reading this first level defender. I showed Scarsdale before. This is kind of a similar concept here. It's not midline, it's more veer. But you can see a guy crashes down. Dante's going to pick it up. Look at him get one-on-one blocks at the second level. And he gets to that second level. This is a very elusive guy. Right? He makes people miss, gets to that second level, can create those big dynamic plays at the quarterback spot. You can also put him at the running back spot, but also at the wide receiver spot. Here's the arrow located right here. He's in the slot. And you're going to see teams against Harrison, like Somers, is going to load the box. You got a 5-man defensive line, 2 backers. You got 7 guys right here, which means, hey, we're man coverage across the board. Can you throw the ball consistently against man coverage? That's what I think Somers is going to test at some point. Say, hey, we don't believe you can. Put Dante Lanza in the slot. If they're giving you this man coverage, you got to attack and you got to win and you got to deliver the ball with accuracy. But you're going to see teams saying, hey, we know you like to run the ball, but we don't think you can pass the ball against our coverage. And see, he gets a nice in-breaking, look at the quarterback, deliver a nice strong strike, leading to a touchdown. So you can use Dante at multiple different spots. Finally, to wrap it all off, what I like that I saw the last couple of weeks is Badner using his legs at the quarterback spot. This is a young man off of play action. You can run quarterback counters. You can get him out on the edge. And there's an option right here, quarterback counter. Going to fake it one way. Look at the lineman pulling. Love the execution. Down blocks right there. Nice kick out. He runs underneath it. Look at him follow his blockers. Get to that second level. This is going to be so important if Harrison is going to win this game. Other guys like Olsey and Badner are really going to have to step up and make plays. And then we go to Somers. And Somers is very explosive. And again, on this little session, we're going to just be focusing on the wide receiver. And that's Palazzolo. And he does so much for this team because he really is a matchup nightmare. And here he is going to be in the slot. And because, again, they have 2 back Somers, you can see the box lane is kind of bringing in a heavy box, right, with this outside defender playing in between. But it gives a strong indication that you're going to be in some man coverage here. And if you're in man coverage versus Palazzolo, you're in deep trouble. Now, number 9 probably breaks to the flats while that H-back goes to the flats, but they're going to roll out Iglesias here. And it puts a real bind on the defense because he has the ability to run, and they're kind of flooding. If this is going to be a zone, they're going to be flooding it. Right? And you can see, they're all matched up one-on-one, but look at the speed Palazzolo gets on his defender. Makes him trip, right? Because, again, you're trying to take away the deep route. It really forces you to bail out, and now look, he's cutting it to the out. And look at the space that this generates. I mean, this out, it's a deep out, leads to a big gainer because he puts so much pressure on your defense. What I like Somers did as well, I mentioned throwing out a condensed formation, they also can go empty. Right? They come out at empty, and what this forces is, hey, it's going to reveal your coverage. And this is a big indicator right here. You have 2 backers in the box, 4 D linemen, that's 6. So that's matched up with the quarterback and lineman. And look at all the Fox Lane defenders. They're all at the same level. That's a strong indication that you're in man coverage here. Right? And now Palazzolo is this number 3 receiver. So they like to move him around. He could be the outside, he could be the inside, and then he could be the number 3 receiver. And they're going to run a wheel with him. So you're playing man coverage, and he's running a wheel. That's a tough cover if you're not in zone. Look at the space they create. Look at this offensive line. Nice blocking. Quarterback steps up. They're going to deliver the strike on the move into an easy touchdown. Final part of this tale, again, because Palazzolo has been so dangerous, he opens things up for other guys. Here he is again as the inside receiver. And watch how this defense plays. And they want to get somebody to jam him. So right now, these 2 should be covering these 2. But if you don't communicate, and because he draws so much pressure, sometimes he'll draw 2 guys when he's not supposed to. You got a guy jamming him and the corner staying over the top. What does that mean? The receiver underneath is wide open. And that's what he does. He draws so much attention, it opens up opportunities for other guys. Catches the stop, and then look at this receiver make this play, leading to a touchdown. Again, this Somers pass attack, Mars, can be absolutely deadly. All right, Mars, who wins the rematch for the section title game and why?
You know, this was actually a really interesting game to me, and mainly because it has that significance of, granted, they're on 2 separate divisions, and the winner or loser here, it's not going to impact the standings as heavily as, obviously, if you're losing to a divisional opponent. But this is almost like a pride game in a way, right? For Harrison, This is the same opponent you had from last year in the section title game, and you're playing away, you're playing in Somers. And I feel like that's a memorable thing. That's something that they have to try to fight for to earn that win. And Somers is on the other side of this and saying we've been dominating every opponent we've been playing up to this point, and the question is going to be, will we continue that? And I don't. It's a really tough thing because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wow. I mean, both these teams have some really impressive abilities and skill players. And, maybe I'm crazy to say this, but I think I'm going to go with Harrison. And I think Harrison's going to go into Somers, and I think they might shock Somers because Somers might take the game a little lightly in the first half of this game, like they've done with most of the teams they played against. And I think Harrison's going to catch them off guard, and it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a battle throughout the entirety of this game. And I feel like Harrison has been on a roll. They've won 4 straight, and their defense has been very impressive. And now they're going to get tested. I mean, Somers is going to throw quite a bit at them. And I think Somers is going to kind of drift away of what works the best with them because they have an amazing offensive line that has the ability to push people around. And I think they might get a little too cute and try to throw the ball too much, and it's not going to go their way for a good amount of time. I could be completely wrong. I've been memed on before on the show for making picks that didn't go my way.
I'll say it with your chest. You say you got Harrison.
I just have a weird feeling that Harrison is going to pull this off and cause Somers to have their first loss of the season at home. And I feel like this is going to be a tough one. If I get this right, then I'm just Nostradamus. So I'm going to go with Harrison to win this game.
Listen, I love me some Harrison. I love the way they play defense. And if they had Joe Krupe, I'd feel a little better. But they don't. And I do think you're crazy. So I'm going to go with Somers. Somers is home. If this was at Harrison and they had Joe Krupe, I'd feel a little different. But they don't. And Somers is Godzilla in Section 1A. And right now, to take down Godzilla, you need your entire arsenal ready. And I just don't think Harrison has played a lot better. I think the other guys on the offensive around Dante have really, started to step things up, but they need to take it to that next level. Haven't seen that yet. And again, could these teams meet later on? Based on some of my predictions, I have said that. But for right now, on the road in Godzilla's hometown, I'm going to go with Somers. All right. Let's move to B, and just to give a shout out to you guys, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to help support the channel. Let us know who you think is going to win. We are now moving to B. Got to move a little bit more quickly because we talk way too much. So I know the show is getting a little long, guys. So I appreciate you guys as always. Hope you guys enjoy a little film sessions. So let's dive into it, Mars. B, league matchup. Irvington 2-2 at Byron Mills, who's 3-2. Irvington is sitting at 11 in the Pioneer system. Byron Mills is at 10. This is a huge game, Mars. You got to get these victories. Between these two teams, Irvington won 42-8 versus Crown Harmon. Byram Hills won 51-28 at Hen Hud. I'm going to go with Byram Hills. The offense is number 6 in the league. I know Irvington is number 4. Both can move the ball and score a lot of points. But defensively, I think Byram Hills is a little better defensively. I think Tyler Marscott is going to hit some big plays at the wide receiver spot, and even special teams that at one time has hurt Irvington. I know Fletcher has had amazing INT on Irvington, one-handed from a D lineman, Mars. But I think at Byram Hills, is going to win. They're going to run the ball, shorten this game a little bit. They're going to win this game.
I go Byram Hills as well. They're at home. They need this win to basically almost not secure a spot, but to keep in the race for playoff spot. Yeah, and I feel like they had a really big win against Hen Hud. Their offense has been clicking, and I just feel like they have some momentum on their side. I'm going to go Byram Hills.
Next up, we have Ardsley 1-3 at Edgemont, who's 0-4. Ardsley sitting at 8th in the Pioneer system. Edgemont is 14th in the league. Listen, Ardsley lost a tough game against Bronxville where they were leading for a good portion of it, but ended up losing 26-19. They have lost 2 straight. Edgemont lost 40-0 at Westlake. Listen, I know Ardsley's offense has been very consistent. They're 13 in points. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. Edgemont has really struggled giving up big plays in the run game, and I think this offensive line and Dulcine are going to get going. I'm going to go with Ardsley. Defensively, they've played very strong. Again, they had a defensive touchdown last week on a fumble recovery. they're tough to run against with their defensive front seven. I just think Edgemont has struggled offensively too much. They've been shut out the last 2 weeks. I'm going Ardsley.
I'm also going to go with Ardsley. I feel like they have been playing tough against a lot of teams. In their losses, they lost by a touchdown or less, and I feel like they have the capabilities of really winning a lot of these games. Right? It's just really about not making those mistakes on special teams on offense, and I feel like they just give their opponent a lot of those chances. But I don't think they are this week. I think Ardsley's going to win.
Hi, Max. How's it going? Thank you for joining us. Next up, another interesting matchup. We have Pearl River 4-1 at Pelham, who is I didn't skip a game. Yep, nope. Yep. Pearl River 4-1 at Pelham, who's 2-3. Pearl River is currently sitting at number 3 in the Pioneer system. Pelham is 13, so this feels like a massive game for Pelham to stay in it. Pearl River won 20-18 in their big rivalry game versus Nanuet. Pelham lost 42-26 at Pleasantville. They have lost 3 straight. And between these two games, I know it's a dire game for Pelham. Listen, last week they hit a couple big offensive pass plays to Romano and Logan. Can they run the ball against this Pearl River defense is going to be a big question to me. But defensively, Mars, they've allowed way too many big points. They've allowed 26-plus points in 3 straight games, 270 yards rushing last week. In comes Pearl River, Mars, where they can run the ball with Amundsen and take some deep shots to guys like Sullivan and Graziano. I'm going to go with Pearl River. I think, again, 5th in points scored, 6th in defensive points allowed. Was solid last week, even though they gave up some big plays. If Pearl River can avoid turnovers, I think they're going to move the ball and win this game.
Yeah, I'm also going with Pearl River. I agree with you. I feel like they have a lot more things going for them right now, and Pelham struggles to stop the run, and that's of course that's Pearl River's best aspect. And but they also on the offensive side, they have a lot of different ways in which they can burn you. And I feel like obviously they had a really close win in the Little Brown Jug game. But now they're going to be on their way to try to secure that 3rd spot, or even just hopefully improve it. So I feel like Pearl River is going to win this game, being the away team.
Welcome, Charlie, and you're about to find out. We're going through the B games. So next up, we have Croton Harmon 0-4 at Briarcliff Hamilton Football Program, who's 2-3. Croton Harmon is sitting at 15th. Briarcliff Hamilton is at 7th, Mars. So again, they're right on the edge right there. You have to be in the top 8. Croton Harmon lost 42-8 at Irvington. Briarcliff Hamilton Football Program lost a really good game, 28-21 versus Rhinebeck. And in this game, I'm going to go with Briarcliff Hamilton Football Program. I mean, offensively, we know that they can move the ball. This is a team that's 9th in points scored. Quarterback Vincent had 2 touchdowns. Murray and Birch made some big plays, but the interceptions hurt last week. One of them was for a touchdown. If they are smarter with the football, I think they're going to move and put up some big points. Croton Harmon's defense has really struggled. They've allowed 27-plus points in all 4 games this year. I'm going with Briarcliff.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Briarcliff as well. I feel like I agree with you. If they limit the mistakes, then I feel like their offense can be a little more consistent. And the more chances they get, the higher chances they're going to score, especially if they can limit those types of mistakes. A pick 6 is not what you want to have, especially when
that was a big one.
You're trying to get yourself. Yeah, when you're trying to get yourself on more of a momentum, and they lost by a touchdown. So I feel like if they limit that, they'll be all right.
Next up, an interesting Hen Hud 2-3 at Bronxville is 4-0. Hen Hud is sitting at 12th. Bronxville is sitting at number 2 in the Pioneer system. Hen Hud lost 51-28 in the shootout versus Byram Hills. Bronxville won a close game, 26-19 at Ardsley. And in this one, again, Hen Hud offensively, Mars, they're number 3 in points scored. This is a team that's really starting to move the ball. They've scored over 80 points the last 2 games. Running back Parkes has been tremendous. Had 4 touchdowns last week on offense, defense, and special teams combined. But defensively, they struggle. They're 14 out of 15 in points allowed. Last game, they've given up 28-plus points. In comes Bronxville with the number 2 offense, and they can run the ball very efficiently with Patterson and Formato, and then take some play-action shots with their quarterback. And this is the number 1 defense in B in points allowed. So they have not allowed a team to score more than 1 offensive touchdown. Last week was the first time that occurred. So this defensive front 7 is a force. I think Hen Hud will still hit some plays because they have been super explosive, but I don't think they're going to be able to slow down Bronxville. I'm going Bronxville.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Bronxville. I feel like their momentum has been continuing. This last week was probably the closest game they've had, and I feel like they have been firing on all cylinders. I feel like their offense is going to really have a field day with Hen Hud because of the fact that Hen Hud's defense has been struggling, but their defense, Bronxville's defense, has been top level as well. So that's going to be an interesting matchup to see, but I'm going to go with Bronxville.
All right, here's the game right before the game of the week. Which one is it going to be? Well, it's Pleasantville 2-2 at Nanuet, who's 2-2. A very interesting matchup. Pleasantville sitting currently at the 4th spot in the Pioneer system. Nanuet is 6th. And Pleasantville, they won 42-26 versus Pelham. Nanuet lost a heartbreaker 20-18 at their rival Pearl River. And I tell you what, Pleasantville's offense woke up, Mars. They finally woke up. They woke up and ran the ball. They had 270 yards rushing, 6.3 yards a carry. Sadao in his offensive line was tremendous. He had 163 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hazinski also had a strong game. He had a passing touchdown as well, but he also ran the ball. I think he had 63 yards rushing. And this pass attack, 2 passing touchdowns, Mars. So, again, multiple guys contributing. It starts with the running game. It started with this offensive line we talked about in the pre-show. But then the pass attack woke up a little bit. They made some plays in the passing game. Now, the bad, 3 turnovers. Right? You can't have that. 2 INTs. They had a fumble that was returned for a touchdown. Those are the big no-nos that we've seen the ugliness on that offense come out at times. But their ability to run the ball is where it starts. Really love that. Problem is, they're up against a tough defense. This is the number 4 defense in points allowed. They're not very big, but they are physical. They get after you. And so that's going to be a very interesting dynamic there. Nanuet's offense, they like to run the ball. Duffy's been tremendous. Moran's been tremendous. They run with physicality. But this Pleasantville defense is starting to continue to now churn up back-to-back pretty strong games outside a couple of big throws down the field where it felt like some broken coverage and some missed tackles were a big thing. But McPhee's been really good. Feeney has been really good. This was a tough one. Pleasantville on the road in Nanuet. If it was in Pleasantville, I'd feel a little bit better. But I am going to go with Pleasantville. I think, again, Nanuet is physical. They are tough. Pleasantville waking up offensively. And if that's offensive line plays like it did versus Pelham, they have a good chance of winning this game. I think they will play well. And I think it's going to be a close win, but a win nonetheless. I'm going Pleasantville. Marsh, you're not picking the game, but tell us, what should the fans be looking out for?
I mean, the biggest thing is going to be about which team. It's almost like maybe sounds cliche, but what team wants it more? I mean, both these teams are gritty. Right? They both are going to be trying to run downhill. I don't expect any of these teams to be throwing all the way all across the field. And so this might be one of the fastest games ever recorded in football. But I think
Peterson for Nanuet has had some impressive throws. I will say that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you can't, but it's almost just like I haven't really seen much for that to be the case. But expect really the Hogs up front from both sides are going to have to really step up. I mean, it's really going to be from Pleasantville's perspective. Last week you did see that happen, and that's why they were able to run the ball so effectively. And Nanuet is going to have to be really gritty, right? They're going to if you're really going to see who will win, it's going to be up to the guys up front to set the tone, right? So really interesting to see what happens with this one.
With that said, now let's go to the game of the week, and this one's an interesting one. We have Westlake, who's 4-0, at Sleepy Hollow, who is 2-1. And Westlake is currently sitting number 1 in the Pioneer System 4B. Sleepy Hollow is sitting at number 9, so a major game. Westlake won 40-0 versus Edgemont. Sleepy Hollow had a bye week last week, and they've had key wins, versus Hen Hud. And this is going to be a real test to see how real Sleepy Hollow is for me. But let's start with Westlake. They come in, they have the number 1 offense in points scored in B. They have scored 30-plus points in 3 straight games. Obviously starts with the running game. They'll give you condensed formations. They'll give you some wing T stuff. But they're also been running more out of the spread. And again, it's multiple guys who have contributed. They have multiple backs who can make big plays for them. 2 of them, though, have really stood out to me over the last couple of weeks. And that is DiNapoli, who I've mentioned on this show before, who is an explosive back, and Hud. This is a young man. I think he's a sophomore? He's made some big plays as well. So maybe Chad can tell me, this young man and what grade he's in. But this is a young man who stood out on tape for me as well, number 6. Has been kind of their big playmakers. We know about their quarterback in Lingaza, who's also been very active. But I got to give a lot of credit to this O-line, Mars. Guys like Negrelli, Mealy, Hannon, and company, they have been moving guys, and they have a nice mix of some, they're not all towers, right? But they have some scrappiness to them. They got some size to them. And they've really executed in the run game. And so that's been really important. And I think it's going to continue to be very important as they, the run game is really going to dictate things in this game. Defensively, they come in at number 2. And, they have 2 shutouts this year. And, again, multiple guys attacking on the defensive side of the ball. The keys, again, offensively, they're going to play their game. And it starts with the run game. They're going to run the ball. They're going to attack the edge. They're going to attack off tackle. There's one play I'm going to show on film that I kind of like, that they do a variation of when they're condensed and when they're spread, where they're just getting these backs to, again, find different lanes and then attack it. Defensively, just prevent the big play. That's the big one. Force Sleepy Hollow to be efficient on the offensive side of the ball is going to be key. Thoughts on Westlake, Mars, before we talk Sleepy Hollow and then a quick film?
Yeah, I feel like their defense has been really impressive. They've been scrappy. They showed a lot of speed and aggressiveness, but their offense has a lot of skill guys that can make big plays. And I mean and their offensive line has really been impressive, moving guys around and creating these massive lanes for their backs that can make a lot of plays, especially once they get to the second level. So all around, they've been playing very well so far this year.
Yeah, and listen, when we go to Sleepy Hollow, they had the bye week last week. This, to me, is going to be a real test on where they are in the B scale for me. Because offensively, yeah, they're 8 out of 15 in points. They don't have their running back in Rich. Don't know his status. He's obviously a huge player for them. He's one of the better athletes in B. So if he's not playing, that's a major loss. But what I saw on tape was that, some other guys stood up. Mahood had 2 rushing touchdowns their last game. Their quarterback in Pash has made some big plays. And that's going to be so important because it's hard to run against Westlake consistently. And if you can't, you're going to have to make some plays in the passing game. And so he's going to have to deliver some big moments, in a muddy pocket with some pressure. He's going to have to maneuver through that and hit some big plays to guys like Onwe, who has a touchdown in 2 straight games. Federici got a receiving touchdown last game. So this is going to be very interesting. If they don't have Richardson, other guys are going to have to step up, and this offensive line has their handful. Defensively, Mars, this is why I said I want to see what's real. This is the number 3 defense in stats per game in points allowed. How real are they? They're going to have to stop the run. They've allowed 6 points the last 2 games, but stopping the big play from these Westlake running backs is going to be key for them to stay in this one. Kind of those are the big ones for me, Mars. Thoughts on Sleepy Hollow, any matchup, and then we'll go to tape.
Yeah, I feel like the most impressive thing is their defense and the way that they've been playing. And obviously the matchup for me is going to be this defense of Sleepy Hollow against this Westlake offense. Because now you're by stats alone, you're saying, well, these 2 teams are comparable, right, on these sides of the ball. So it's really going to be a good testament to see whether or not Sleepy Hollow's defense is for real or it's not, right? And I feel like it has a lot to do with the guys up front, being able to either close down these gaps or if they can even contain guys like the Napoli, who have been really impressive all year. So it's going to be really interesting to see this type of matchup and what happens here.
Yeah, and so I'm going to show, again, both offenses, and I'm going to really focus in on kind of one play for Westlake because I really like this play. And so let's talk about it. And this first one up, Westlake, I mentioned, they'll run out of condensed formations and they'll run out of the spread. And this is kind of the similar mirror play, just run out of, again, different formations. They're 2x2 here. And you're going to see, again, they're going to motion this slot receiver, which is the Napoli, and they're going to run kind of this power play where they're going to have a guard pulling. You see a bunch of down blocks here, and this fullback or tailback is going to be kicking out the end. And this guard's going to pull away and get to that second level. And why I like this is you see them spread. So this defense is going to, if they're going to play zone one way, that safety's got to cheat to his side. So they're really pulling somebody out of that box, and they're going to attack, again, this safety's off the edge, away from it. So they're going to attack kind of off tackle here because they have that one less guy in the box. And so running out of the spread makes sense right here. You get one less guy out of the box. Look at the blocking. Look at the execution. Backs blocking. Offensive lineman getting movement. Guard getting up to that second level. And you get a guy like the Napoli with this kind of lane to the second level, Mars. It is sayonara. See you later. Right? Look at the guys blocking downfield. I love that. And again, giving different formations but running similar plays. And so you see that running out of the spread for guys get out of the box. And now we come here. You get 2 slots, 2 wide receivers, and it's the same play. And so why do they want to do it? Well, look at these 2 hangers. Right? They got 2 guys hanging right off the edge, so they're going to try to run underneath it. Right? So they want to run underneath it, but it's the same play. You get down blocks, you get the guard coming across, you get this back going to kick out the outside guy. And again, this time they're giving it to HUD here, but this is going to be a little tighter. Like the other one was a little bit wider. Look how tight this one. Nice kick out block. Look at the movement up front. But this is a tighter lane, right? You're playing Pearl River. It's a tighter lane right here. Right, so look at him squeeze through that second level. Look at the guard get up to that second level defender right there. I love that. And watch him find that little lane. I mean, this is good vision. This is guys staying on their blocks. And then once he gets to that second level, making guys miss. And this was a huge moment in the game. It sparked kind of the touchdown that made them pull away in this one. Now I look at Sleepy Hollow. And again, if they don't have Richardson, other guys are going to have to step up. And it could start in the run game. You're going to get tight end wing. And this offensive line is really going to have to move bodies. Right? And they're running back in Mahood right here. You're going to see down blocks. Going to get some guards pulling. Again, you don't want to run east and west. You want to run downhill. And that's going to be really important. Can they win at the point of attack? They win it right here. Look at them down block, moving these guys. Nice kick out here. Getting a guy to the second level. And you're going to need other backs to step up. Mahood did it last game. Gets that second level. And again, running with physicality, running downhill. Don't go east and west because Westlake has a lot of speed. But another thing that's been real important is the quarterback spot. And they're going to have to make plays in the passing game. And if Westlake's going to give you man, you're going to have to try to beat it. And you can see this is an opportunity right here. They got multiple guys in the 7 guys in the box right here. It means you got some man coverage. And they're going to need some of these receivers to win these one-on-one matchups and their quarterback to deliver some strikes. So they're going to run a little bubble and then a post. And really, they're faking the bubble so that they can get this one-on-one matchup on the post. But what I want to see is the quarterback. Again, he has to pump. Look at the pressure he faces. And you're going to have to maneuver that. Look at him move his feet, then reset. And watch this strike. That's a beautiful throw. And Westlake's going to generate pressure. But can Sleepy Hollow, can other guys step up, make plays in muddy waters, deliver on these one-on-one matchups? That's going to be the big question. All right, Mars, who do you got winning and why?
Well, this is definitely an interesting game, mainly because Sleepy Hollow is one of those teams that have shown a lot of promise, and this is going to be a good question to see, or really a good answer to see whether or not they are for real, right? And Westlake has been playing very well all season long. They've kind of flown under the radar for most of it, and now, and I mentioned this last week, that now they are they have the target on their back, right, as being the top team, now officially ranked on the standings as being the top team in B. And at the top, everyone's gunning for you. And that means that there's the higher expectations. Sleepy Hollows is the underdog, and they're playing at home. So does that elevate their play? And I think it does. But I also think that Westlake is going to win this game. I think that Westlake has more talent. I think that they have the momentum on their side. Their offensive line's been playing very well. And I just feel like their defense is very aggressive, and it's going to have to force Sleepy Hollow to make a lot of mistakes. And I feel like so far, Sleepy Hollow has been doing very well, especially with their weapons, but they've shown times that they have caved or cracked, and they also have some injuries that could play a big role in how this offensive efficiency is going to be. So I'm going to go with Westlake here to go on the road and win in this next game to go 5-0.
Yeah, I agree with you. We don't get injury reports, and not knowing if Richardson's going to play because he is a key factor in their offense. Sleepy Hollow is a very good story. But I am going to go with Westlake. I think they have too many playmakers. This defense has been on a roll, and I've been really impressed with how they play in the trenches these last few games. And if that continues, I think they win this game. Could be close early on. Again, Sleepy Hollow might shock a little bit, but I do think Westlake pulls away and wins this game decisively. I'm going to go with Westlake. All right. So that was that right there. We are in our final stretch. We got our CD and Hudson Valley Football League, and so let's move on to that one, Mars. Next up, we have CD League. Woodlands 1-4 at Putt Valley, who's 2-2. Woodlands is number 5 in C. Putt Valley is tied for first. Woodlands lost 38-32 versus Portchester non-league game. Putt Valley did not have a game last week. I am going to go with Putt Valley. Defensively, this is the number 2 defense out of the 7 schools in C and D. They've allowed 7 or less in 2 straight games. I know Woodlands can move the ball, but they're going up against a very tough defense, and defensively, Woodlands has struggled. And this Putt Valley offense, I think they can run the ball with Andre Tarrant and Caden Glenn. I'm going Putt Valley.
I'm also going to go with Putt Valley. I feel like they have more than enough talent that they can really shut down Woodland's offense, and they have the ability to score at will at times, especially with guys like Caden Glenn. I'm going to go with Putt Valley here. Thank
you, DJ. HUD is a sophomore. Appreciate you letting us know. Next up, CD matchup, Tucko 2-2 at Dobbs Ferry is 3-1. This one's a very interesting one. Dobbs Ferry is tied for first in league play as well with the other teams. Tucko did not have a game last week, and Dobbs Ferry did not have a game last week. And this one's interesting because the Tucko rush attack did play well last game. Connolly had over 100 yards, but Getty had 94 yards. In this defense, guys like Serlo and Gardier can make plays. Can they stop the run consistent enough? Because Dobbs Ferry comes in with the number 1 offense. They've scored 40-plus points in 3 straight games. Jackson Kearns has been tremendous. Over 200 total yards their last game. O'Connor is another one. 3 touchdowns last game. I feel like Dobbs Ferry offense is a little too high-powered. I'm going Dobbs Ferry. Their defense, again, if they can slow down the run, the guys, again, like Rodriguez, Broccoli, Ravage, who makes plays for them, and force Tucko into a passing situations, I think that goes in Dobbs Ferry's favor. I'm going to go with Dobbs Ferry.
I agree. I feel like Dobbs Ferry all around has been playing very well this year, and their defense has been shutting teams down. And once they get the ball in their hands, they can just drag the game out, and they've just been scoring at will. I'm going to go with Dobbs Ferry.
Next up, CD matchup, we have Hastings 1-3 at Valhalla, who's 3-0. Hastings is number 4. Again, top 4 and C get in, so you want to get into that top 4. Valhalla's tied for first. Both teams did not have a game last week. But I am going to go with Valhalla. I mean, they're one of the big surprise teams coming into this, so far this season. They're rocking the number 1 defense out of the C and D schools. They have allowed 10 or less the first 3 games. And this rush attack last time they played, Mars, had 4 players rush for 100 yards. They're just playing at a very high level. I'm going to go with Valhalla.
Yeah, I agree. I think Valhalla their momentum has been fantastic. They were the team that was under the radar, but now they're showing out. Their defense has been very aggressive and stopped teams in their tracks, and their offense is really fast. It has a high-powered ability to score a lot of points. I'm going to go with Valhalla.
In the Hudson Valley Football League, you have Poughkeepsie 0-5 at Tappan Zee, who's 4-1. Poughkeepsie is 7th. Tappan Zee is tied for first with Greeley, but they have the win over Greeley. And Poughkeepsie lost 34-6 versus Greeley last week. Tappan Zee won 35-6 at Panis. And I'm going to go with Tappan Zee. Listen, this offense has really been skyrocketing. They've scored 30-plus points in 2 straight games. This pass attack has really picked up the last couple weeks with their quarterback in Kevalian and the receivers in Pisione, Martinez, and Kukla. And this is the number 1 defense in the Hudson Valley Football League, Mars. They can really get after you and force turnovers. Poughkeepsie's defense is last in points allowed in the Hudson Valley Football League. I'm going Tappan Zee. They got too much.
Yeah, I agree. Tappan Zee has a lot more talent. I just feel like they're the best HVFL team currently right now, and I feel like they just have the momentum on their side. I'm gonna go with Tappan Zee.
Another Hudson Valley Football League matchup: Albertus Magnus 1-2 at Panis, who's 1-3. This one's interesting. Magnus is 6th. Panis is 5th. Again, trying to get into that top 4. Magnus lost 20-0 versus Peekskill. Panis lost 35-6 versus Tappan Zee. I'm going to go with Panis. They're number 3 in points scored. They can move the ball. Turnovers have been a real killer for them. Albertus Magnus' defense has been pretty solid as well. They're 4th in points allowed. But I do think Panis' defense will make enough plays in this one. They are at home, and when teams are even, I tend to go towards the home team. I think Panis' offense will make enough plays. I'm going to Walter Panis.
Yeah, I do agree, and I feel like that's kind of the main reason for me as well, that they're at home. They had a really tough game against Tappan Zee last week, but their offense has been able to score points. I feel like at home with kind of a little bit of a anger built in them, I feel like they're going to win this game. I'm going to go Panis.
Last game, Hudson Valley Football League and D crossover non-league game. Peekskill 3-1 at Haldane, who's 2-2. Interesting matchup. Peekskill's currently sitting at 3rd in the Hudson Valley Football League. They won 20-0 at Magnus. Haldane did not have a game last week. And I look at this, Mars, what has happened to Haldane's offense? It's been a struggle. They've scored 7 or less in 2 straight games. They're going up against a very tough Peekskill defense, who's number 2. They've allowed, out of the Hudson Valley Football League, they've allowed 12 or less points in 3 straight games. This one's a tough one, but to me, Peekskill's offense is also very inconsistent. I think Haldane's defense is going to help carry this. It's going to be a very low-scoring game. Haldane is at home. I think offensively, they'll run enough against this Peekskill defense. Expect a low-scoring game. Haldane forces a couple turnovers. They win the game.
I know with Peekskill, I feel like their defense is going to kind of do exactly what you think Haldane's defense is going to do. I think they're going to cause Haldane to make some mistakes. Their offense is going to start getting in the rhythm, get more chances, and I feel like Peekskill is going to score some points and get them the win here. I'm going to go Peekskill.
All right, that was it, guys. I mean, we did a lot. We talked standings, we picked games, we showed the big matchups, did some film. I hope you guys absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't worry if you missed anything. This is going to be posted to our live show. They have me at 68%, Mars. So again, those low numbers last week hasn't changed everyone's mind yet.
Do you not believe when I have to do I have to go perfect in my picks this week?
Yeah, I guess we're going to see. We are both tied with wins, but thank you guys as always. Any last questions? So Mr. Cash Out, yeah, it was the game of the week. So that was the game of the week. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Also, consider joining our Patreon. We do some added benefits for those guys. It's a huge help and support for our group, and we thank our members, as always. With that, guys, enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll see you all very soon.